Thank you. Our program continues with the next panel, Smarter Together, Strengthening North America's Competitive Edge Through Innovation. This session looks at how AI, advanced manufacturing, and coordinated digital policy can accelerate productivity, strengthen trilateral competitiveness, and position North America as a global model for innovation-led growth. Moderating this discussion is Co-Executive Director of the Small Business Roundtable. Please welcome the moderator, Rhett, Buttle, and our distinguished panel.
Well, good afternoon. It is great to be back with you all. Thank you all so much. I think I got the treat. I feel very privileged to be up here with these amazing business leaders, contributors, and amazing leaders. Let me start by doing quick introductions. I'll start down on the left with, I like to say, Senator, maybe future President, Ramiro Cavazos, longtime friend, President and CEO of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber. Has been an amazing leader, both in the US, Mexico, and Canada, and a longtime partner of the Small Business Roundtable. And we're super thrilled to also have with us Monica Aspe, who's the CEO of AT&T Mexico, and I learned in the back room just been named the #1 business leader in Mexico. So we are basking in her presence.
Bravo, bravo.
And also was thrilled to be joined by Pedro Huerta, who is the country director for Amazon Mexico and an amazing leader here in Mexico and doing amazing work to support small business.
And he was high on that list also.
And so an amazing panel to really help us kind of decode the future of North America, the way that so many of our corporate partners are thinking about the ecosystem. And that's really where I want to start the conversation. And so wanted to open up and Ramiro, maybe start with you a little bit about, we've been talking about kind of the future of this North American bloc, and really would love to hear from all of you the way that you're thinking about kind of the role of North America, the US, Mexico, Canada kind of alliance in this moment where there's competing global pressure. There's a lot of innovation and excitement happening, but quite frankly, I think we've heard both last night and today that there's some challenges ahead. So how are you thinking about this moment? Ramiro, we'll start with you, and then Pedro, maybe come to you, and we'll round out with Monica. So Ramiro, kick us off.
Thank you, Rhett. Well, I'm honored to be here with Monica and Pedro and yourself, Rhett. I can't help but be humbled but to be in Mexico City. If you know your history and you know where you came from, you know where you're going. And that's a quote by many folks, but I'm thinking of 1821 when the Mexican Empire was stretched from Central America all the way up to Canada. And this entire region, the first European language was Spanish. And in fact, the Spanish came here to Mexico, as we all know, 120, and North America, quite frankly, 128 years before the British arrived at Plymouth Rock. So, and the first capital to fund a trade route to the Indies was capital provided by a woman, by Queen Isabella, and in Cristobal Colon when he came here. So I love Mexico. My heart is Mexicano, even though I was born in Texas. And when we think about TEMEC and USMCA, I've been blessed to be a part of those initiatives in San Antonio and now in Washington, D.C. And I believe besides the culture and the history, these trade routes in North America have been in place for more than 300 years. And they've really been led by Mexico. And now Mexico is the largest trading partner for us. And then Canada is shortly behind, taking the place of China. So I love data, I love history, and I love information, and it's irrefutable. So I'm honored to be on this panel with these great corporate leaders. And for me, that's the foundation of why all of us being here today is so important. It doesn't matter. I love to tell people, being Hispanic is a state of mind. And so you all are now Hispanic, all of you. And so I'm just very blessed to be here, and thank you.
And after spending a weekend in Mexico City, I think we all want to be Hispanic and Mexican in particular. Pedro, it's interesting. You're actually Peruvian, is my understanding.
Yes, I am.
But have become a force in the Mexican business community. So in some ways, you're an outsider looking in, and so would love your thoughts kind of on this question.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for having me in the panel. I cannot help but think of the session I had with Jeff Bezos, which was in a rainy day in Seattle, which is very common in Seattle to be rainy. And it was back in April of 2014 when we were considering whether to expand into Mexico or not for Amazon. I had been hired as the first employee of Amazon all of Latin America. And so we had launched Brazil. And then I was writing a document in the typical Amazon fashion when Jeff came in and we all started reading the document. And he looked at me after he finished reading the document and he said, "Pedro, what is the question?" Like, of course we need to launch Mexico. Look, we have so many fulfillment centers in California, Arizona, Texas, Nuevo Mexico. We are so close. There is a kind of free flow of merchandise between one and the other country. You should see this border as a superpower for the business that you're trying to build in Mexico. And at times we launched Mexico in 2015, driven by that inspiration from Jeff and that conviction. I left the Latin American business to go to Amazon Europe. I was in Luxembourg, in Germany. Then I did artificial intelligence with Alexa. And then I came back only 2 years ago. And it's fascinating to see how the vision that Jeff and some of the other senior vice presidents, when we had that meeting back in April 2014, had become a reality. You know, that Amazon Mexico has become a great melting pot between two big forces. One, the Mexican small business, small and medium businesses that we have, complemented with a lot of goods from the US coming, and so serving the Mexican customer in a very comprehensive way. And so this is kind of the vision that still remains true for us in Mexico and in Amazon. And we believe that this superpower that we have been kind of benefiting from will be a superpower going into the next 10 years.
Super helpful. Monica, you said it's such an interesting position, just given your long history in Mexico. Give us a sense of how you're sort of thinking, given where you sit at AT&T, about the future of Mexico, but also this tri-national bloc.
Thank you. Great being here with all of you. Thanks for having me here in this panel. So when I think that during the last few years we've been discussing with such passion, right, on for and against, and with different views around the economic relationship between Mexico and the US, really between Mexico, the US, and Canada. While we were having those discussions, Mexico went from the third trading partner of the US to the second, surpassing China, and then to the first, surpassing Canada. So it's very interesting because one thing is the debate we have, and the other thing is the economic realities of the largest trading partnership in the history of humankind. And that is only getting stronger. So I think the question now is whether it will happen with inertia and of course continue because it just makes economic sense, or whether we will proactively promote having the best possible rules and having the three countries under USMCA comply with the rules, because that's also a very relevant question in partnerships, and therefore do more than what just inertia gives us. And really, I think this is the path. I actually think it's the only path for North America's leadership in terms of technology and innovation in a global context. I don't think the US has an independent path to global leadership in the technological race. I think it does need to go as a North American bloc. And I think that's what reality is showing. It's a fantastic economy what the US drives, but of course no one can do everything. And it needs to complement its strengths with the strengths of partners. And I think that's what's going to happen, of course, after a few bumps that we're going through.
Monica, I'm going to stay with you and then maybe go to Pedro after to talk about digital infrastructure. And, you know, I've been talking a lot here about how the backbone of our economy, all three of our economies, are small businesses who are here to talk about. But I think everyone in this room also cares about underserved communities and making sure, and we know that digital readiness and connectivity and digital infrastructure is actually a challenge and opportunity across all of our countries. And so would love your thoughts on how you see that, how AT&T is showing up in that area.
Well, we know that that resilient, strong, continuous infrastructure is the backbone of competitiveness for economies. And that is particularly true today when we talk about digital technologies. And when we double click on that, which are those foundational technologies? Well, it's what Pedro does, and he'll talk about his part, and it's what we do at AT&T, which is connectivity. So it's data processing and connectivity to transport that data. So these are really the infrastructures that are today the backbone for global competitiveness. And in North America, as an economic bloc, we have the disparities are too many. Not only between the countries, where of course Mexico lacks the quality of infrastructure of the US, even of Canada's, but also within regions, and that happens among inside of the three countries. And this is really important for SMEs. It's really important for rural-urban equality, or equality of opportunities, that people can thrive economically and socially, regardless of the location where they happen to reside. And that has to do with infrastructure. So I think the focus on digital infrastructure is really a critical focus, as much as the focus on energy. They go side by side. And this should be seen as the key technologies to drive North American competitiveness and into the future, but also inclusiveness. Because this is about education, about access to financial services, about access to healthcare information and services, as much as it is about self-driving cars and advanced manufacturing that's connected in the new plants that are really amazing. It has to do with reaching the ceiling, let's say, and breaking the ceiling of innovation, but it also has to do with raising the floor of those less advantaged.
Pedro, Amazon doesn't think about digital infrastructure at all, I'm sure. But
Yeah. One thing that I just wanted to share with you, it's a personal anecdote, is because I worked here in Mexico between the years 2006 and 2010. I was in the book industry. I was the publisher of Grijalbo, or Random House. And I came back in 2024, so 14 years later. Two things I immediately noticed. The first thing, there were no bochitos. You know these taxis? You know, the green ones where it was so nice, where you could just pull a rope and close the door. That wasn't there anymore, and everybody had a cell phone, and everybody was connected to the internet. And it's that digital infrastructure that is setting up Mexico for being one of the top 3 markets worldwide for growth in e-commerce. We have only 13% of penetration of online in the overall retail in Mexico, which means we are at the infancy of what e-commerce will do. And what this infrastructure that companies like AT&T or other companies have created for Mexican consumers and Mexican businesses is the fact, why is it so vibrant? Because it's a young population and it has a lot of offering. There are pure players like Mercado Libre and Amazon, for example, but there are strong legacy brick and mortar stores like you might know Walmart, which is a large company in the US, and it is a large company here, Liverpool, Palacio de Hierro, plus you have some Asian platforms that are competing in a market segment that is vibrant, that is growing, and that has the kind of parameters for growth. And so that's the number one check for the Mexican e-commerce business. The second thing is that this vibrancy that we see, not only given by the infrastructure, is giving as well by the inventiveness, the innovation, the energy, and the passion of the small and medium businesses that we find here in Mexico. Alone in Amazon Mexico, we have 27,000 small and medium businesses that thrive selling. And I loved what Monica said about, it's not about companies in Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. It's everywhere. Oaxaca, Chiapas, Tabasco, Nuevo León, Tijuana. And the most fascinating metric that I always check is, out of 100% of the orders of this small and medium businesses in Mexico, 80% of those go into another state, you know? And out of the 27,000 Mexican companies that sell with us, already 3,000 sell into the United States, you know? And we have Lean Travel, for example, which is a Mexican company that created products for travel based out of Mexican artisanry, is already in the US, and it's selling a large percentage of the sales outside of Mexico. And so the key question is not anymore how big are you or how small are you. It's just how fast and nimble are you, and how fast are you in adopting and acquiring certain skills like artificial intelligence, and I'm sure we're gonna talk a little bit about that, you know, but that is the key challenge that we at Amazon try to put in front of all the Mexican businesses, in all of the Mexican customers, in order to accelerate that transition. Because the framework, as you were talking about the digital infrastructure, has been set from the connectivity side. We still have a long way to go on the financial inclusion, on the digital finance methods, that you will see a lot of advertising for different fintechs. You know, that's a cool name now for being a technology company in the finance. But that is exactly because there is so many Mexicans joining a whole new set of services. And that is progress. That is opportunity. And that is something that I just want to say that Amazon, you know, we try to do it from our own vantage point, which is giving, giving those 27,000 companies and many more the opportunity to be part of this digital transformation and of this growth that we are seeing in the e-commerce.
And I think that's the exciting thing about the moment we're living in. Obviously, so many challenges, but the idea that technology and digital infrastructure can level the playing field in so many ways, that someone who's sitting in a room with 3 people can do something so innovative that gets Amazon or AT&T to think about something in a different way. That's possible in this moment, and that's exciting. And Ramiro, you've been leading that work at the United States Hispanic Chamber. I was here with you about 1.5 years ago when you launched your office here in Mexico City, because the US Hispanic Chamber sees the opportunity. And I'm just wondering, sort of as digital trade expands, and as the United States Hispanic Chamber becomes a force to be reckoned with across the world, how are you thinking about the opportunities and the challenges for your members?
Well, there's no question that the digital transition that AT&T, Monica, you and Pedro are dealing with at Amazon is the quicker we fill that gap, the more economic success Mexico, Canada, and the US will have, because I didn't know it was just 13% penetration. That's you know, a big number that we can grow. I've been coming to Mexico. I grew up 8 miles from the Mexican border in South Texas, and so, you know, when we did the first trade missions in the 80s and 90s, I was a very young man. I would meet with my counterparts, and I learned early on that in Mexico, partnerships are critical. They're very important. Also in Canada, and I want to introduce one of our key partners. He's a highly respected lawyer who I met in Los Angeles. Here in Mexico, Luis Gonzalez with Perez Correa Gonzalez. I hate to embarrass him in public because he's a very humble man, but you know, thanks to him, we have a satellite office here 1.5 years ago that we opened at his law firm. So muchísimas gracias, Luis. But I am fascinated with the data and the demographics, as I said earlier. When you think of Mexico, the US, well, let's think of Canada. Canada, economic giant. Fewer people than live in the state of California. So demographics are important, but it's also about economic success. You think of Mexico, you know, one of the most productive, successful countries in the world, clearly #1 producer of flat screen TVs in the world, I've been to Puebla, automotive success, producing more vehicles than any other country in the world, I believe. And want to mention the success of a small minority business. Rosa Santana, born and raised in Chihuahua. She runs Forma Automotive, but I was the director of economic development for San Antonio for 7 years, and had worked on NAFTA and had done trade missions. But here comes someone that's a tier 3 supplier for other manufacturers. I don't think anybody here is from Toyota, but she became a tier 1 supplier in San Antonio when we recruited that Tundra Tacoma plant. But I'm very proud of her. She now has second generation. Well, just about 5 years ago, they opened a plant in Guanajuato. And so that tier 1 supplier in the US became a tier 1 supplier in Mexico. And she's the only woman tier 1 supplier that happens to be Latina. And so it's an example of not just TEMEC and USMCA, but an example of the relationship we have with all 3 countries. And so just to conclude, we represent 65 million Latinos in the US. US is the 3rd largest country in the world with 335 million people after China and India. Those 65 million self-identified Hispanics, whether they're 10th generation or they came last night across the border for the American dream, which is everybody's dream to achieve, they represent a $4.1 trillion GDP. If we were our own country, these Latinos in the US, we would be the 5th largest economy in the world, larger than India with 1.4 billion people, and I'm talking just 65 million. So I am so proud of the innovation that immigrants have brought to North America over the years, especially in the US. Mexico itself has 1.4 replacement rate, 1.4 children per family. US has like 1.4 also. You need 2.1 children per family to replace the baby boomers that are retiring. So where else is the workforce going to come from? It has to come from other parts of the world to keep growing the Mexican economy and the US economy and the Canadian economy. And the reason that's so important is now together we're a huge trading bloc. And when USMCA, when NAFTA was passed, it was the first trade agreement that had been agreed to by a developed country, 2 developed countries, and a developing country. I would argue that Mexico is already a developed country, and when you, just to kind of put the cherry on top, Mexico has more trade agreements with other countries than any country in the world. So this is a country that's ready to do business. All it needs is to fill that gap of where we need to get to the next level. And that's why I think we're excited about the partnerships in Mexico and the economic opportunities for North America, because these are countries that are focused on free enterprise. And I believe free enterprise is really one of the best experiments in the world that, some people succeed, others don't. But it rewards people who are prepared and meet opportunity with preparation. And it's about as fair as you're going to get.
So we're actually going to take some Q&A from the audience. I'm going to do one more round of questions, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up to get your questions going, and we're going to run some mics through the audience. I did want to talk a little bit about, Pedro was joking backstage, he said, is it SME, and what's an SME? Because to me, a SME is a subject matter expert, and I said, here SME is small, medium enterprise, but it's also SME, and so in this room we have both of those things. But I think, we're, one of the questions I get sort of, I've committed my career to advocating for SMEs. And one of the questions I often get is, why do these big companies care about SMEs? Why are they spending so much time talking about small and medium enterprises? And, as we know, small business owners and SMEs are the backbones of economies, and the vast majority of people in all of our countries work for SMEs, even though we often turn to corporations, right, for answers. And so, Pedro and Monica, I wanted to hear a little bit from your perspective about, what are your companies doing with the SME sector? Do you do you care about this sector? Why do you care about it? And Ramiro, I think as we're kind of in this moment of trade, we have found that the small business, the SME story is so powerful with policymakers, right? And helping them to understand why the future of the North America bloc. So I'd love to turn to you on that. But Monica, can you tell us a little bit about sort of what AT&T is doing with small businesses and why it's important to you? And Pedro, we'll hear from you next.
Of course, they matter. SMEs matter for AT&T and for every other company, I think, because they are half of Mexico's GDP, and the majority of jobs come from SMEs. So it's a massive part of the economy, and it's a part of the economy that grows, and it's a part of the economy that needs technology to foster. So providing technology to SMEs is critical. So the first way in which we work with SMEs is through our products, in terms of providing tools for productivity. Mostly connectivity. This is a shifting space where services are changing for SMEs. We're catering something, it's interesting because it's becoming something that's different from large companies, definitely, but that's not the personal services either. So doing designing the products and services specifically for SMEs is absolutely critical, and that's why one way we engage. Another one is we support SMEs, particularly innovation in technology, by SMEs through different initiatives. We have Innovadoras, which is a beautiful initiative that provides financing, seed capital, mentorship, access to technology, access to methodologies, and it's a competition, so it's very much merit-based, and it supports mostly female-led, but it's open to everyone. In terms of SMEs in technology. We also have the AT&T 5G fund, where innovations using 5G also go into this fund for seed capital. And we work, actually we have one beautiful initiative that we've done with Amazon, Conectando Raíces, which has to do with artesanas who work with their hands doing canastas?
Yes,
Baskets, sorry. It's okay. Baskets. They weave them, and we help them to be in e-commerce, and we work together with Amazon on that one. So those are examples. And what's the third way in which we work with SMEs? They're our suppliers. So that's also a very important part, and now we're very proud that a couple of the winners in our funds, in Innovadoras and other projects, are now our suppliers of services in AT&T. So we can actually help them scale, and it's a great way to have merit find opportunity in small companies focused on technology and help them really not only build their dream in a small company, but actually be able to scale by becoming suppliers of a large company and then being able to take that to other large companies. So SMEs are absolutely critical for us, and we're very, very open and eager to continue working with this segment.
The supply chain piece you talk about is critical. Ramiro and I and Ron and others who are in the audience, the supply chain piece, and so many of us have seen small and medium enterprises have this symbiotic relationship and seen their lives dramatically change by landing one contract with a partner. But Pedro, would love to hear from the Amazon perspective.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if all of you know, but more than 60% of total sales from Amazon are done by independent sellers. They are not done by big brands. And that is kind of mission critical for us. And one of the key things that whenever I interact with the Mexican sellers is the level of energy, inventiveness and drive that I find in the owners of these small and medium-sized companies is very refreshing, and it's actually very humbling, So that's number one. The second is that when we think about going bigger and, for example, speed, as I told in many forums, like 5 years ago in Mexico, if you receive your Amazon package in 3 days, oh, thank you so much. They even called us. Today, if you don't get it next day, hey, where is my package? Where is my package, right? No, it's fine. It's fine, you know.
Pedro will be in the lobby
exactly.
after this.
Yeah, you can call me in 1-800. Yeah, and so you see, that's changed, but we cannot do it alone. And so we took a very, very conscious and intentional decision many years ago to say we will partner with a lot of delivery providers, you know, that have vans 2, 3. We provide credits for them to buy some of the vans. But without them, we couldn't provide the service that we are so admired for. So it's the Mexican drive, it's the Mexican small and medium businesses in transportation that help us get there. You know, similar to what Monica was saying, what we're trying to do is we're trying to use technology in order to let those creators, particularly artesanos or people who have their small companies, to focus on the product development, and the rest should come out of a box, right? And as well, I think I cannot stress enough how important it is for us as Amazon Mexico to be inserted in the Mexican reality, in the Mexican life. We cannot be just a representative of some company in Seattle. We need to be a Mexican company. And guess who is teaching us the most about this? Are those entrepreneurs that we meet day in, day out. I think that's super important. But the second part that I wanted to highlight that is crucial for us in the future is that we enable, similar to what Monica was saying, the further learning of these entrepreneurs. Artificial intelligence, you know, is here to stay, and it's at different stages of development in different industries. But a powerful number is that 495,000 companies in Mexico have already gone through trainings with Amazon Web Services. It's a pity I cannot say 500,000 because we are so data-driven. I have to say 495,000, but that's okay. It's okay. I mean, my PR is always, you know, they
Slightly under 500,000.
Yeah. Nearly. I love that. Nearly. Almost. Casi, yeah. And so that is a signal that regardless of the size of your business, if you embrace technology, if you embrace artificial intelligence, you will be relevant. Otherwise, and one of the key things that in those early days when Amazon was thinking about Latin America, a lot of the people, big leaders, said this is a great opportunity to create a level playing field through technology and democratization. I think that's super important. And finally, and I am very proud to say that we at Amazon, together with the current Mexican administration, are part of the Hecho en Mexico. You know, it's a big initiative that the Mexican government is driving, is setting the framework so that we, as well as an e-commerce marketplace, can provide benefits to the Mexican manufacturers who are committed to this country. And I think combining, as I was saying at the beginning of my intervention, like the global flow of goods with a strong local presence represented by the Mexican manufacturing and small and medium-sized businesses is the powerful combination that we believe. And we just made an investment in AWS for $5 billion for the next 15 years, which means we're here to stay, and we're here for the Mexican companies to grow.
So we're going to come to Q&A quickly before we do that. Ramiro, we've talked a lot about kind of the economic benefit. The other thing that I love about USHCC, and you're joined by so many of your peers here today, is that advocacy and the voice of SMEs is such a critical part. Can you speak a little bit about that voice as we're kind of in this North American alignment and the work you do with your chamber partners and so many of our friends here today to make sure that we're sort of shaping this global future?
Happy to, Rhett. I mean, we want to lift up the women-owned and minority-owned businesses wherever we have an office. And it's not because we favor them or we think they're better. Many times they are, because during times of tough economic times, small businesses keep their employees longer than larger-owned businesses. 80% of the jobs created in the U.S. are jobs created by small business owners. great companies like AT&T and, of course, Amazon at one time were SMEs. They were small businesses. And when you look at the numbers today, we focus on three things with our 300 chambers. At the local level, they help provide capital, they help provide connections, contracts, and they also help with capacity building. We call it the 3 C's, because those small businesses, the day will come when they'll become an Amazon and an AT&T, and the data backs it up. 43% of Fortune 500 companies in the US were launched by an immigrant or the son or the daughter of an immigrant. That is factual. And so at one time, that evolution started 20, 30 years ago with a Jeff Bezos with an idea in Albuquerque or Miami, you know, with a Cuban stepfather. I mean, that's the humility of what Amazon has built, as to Pedro's, you know, story. And so there is nothing more important than supporting small businesses, because we don't want them to be small businesses forever.
And I know a lot in America, and as an American, we talk a lot about the America dream, but as I do this work and I spend more time in Canada and Mexico, I really feel like we have a North American dream and a North American identity that is embraced through entrepreneurship. We've done a lot of talking at you. We now want to hear from you. If folks want to raise their hand, we'll get in as many questions as we can in the last 15 minutes that we have. So please raise your hand. Would just love for you to introduce your name and your name of your organization and give a question for our amazing panel. Please. Can we run the mic up here?
Thank you. I'm Jo Cato, and I'm happy to be here. I'm with Periwinkle Group from Las Vegas, Nevada. My question is for Romero, and I wrote it down while you were talking. With major global events like the World Cup and the Olympics, for that matter, and these high-impact opportunities for SMEs, especially women-owned and minority-owned, you just cited, to participate in major supply chain. From your perspective, how is the Chamber currently engaging with organizers of these events to ensure SMEs are positioned to compete? And if so, are you seeing barriers in getting through to the organizations in order for your members to compete?
It's a great question. I was just in Los Angeles with our LA Latino Chamber, and the CEO of the LA Area Chamber, Maria Salinas, who obviously is Latina, and the head of the local organizing committee for the Olympics and for FIFA was there. And it was very obvious that, I don't want to use her name, but they were tone deaf when it came to sharing the economic opportunities with the contracts that are in the billions of dollars to host these events. And it created a really good debate in that room that one of us said, well, there are no Hispanics on your local organizing committee, and it's frickin' Los Angeles. And of course, her response was, well, you know, it takes a certain amount of money to be on the organizing committee. So you have to pay to be on the committee. Well, clearly, they're not going to come from, you know, the community. And it created a whole reinvention. The good news is Mayor Bass was there to hear that conversation. So you bring up an important point that's happening in Kansas City, in Miami, in Philadelphia, and our local Latino and Latina chambers are very actively monitoring who's making those decisions for contracting. Good news is most of the funding is coming from the public sector, and so there's some accountability there to spread the wealth. Why would you want small businesses to be small forever and not partake in those big contracts? Because we want to feed, you know, you want to water the grass everywhere, not just on one side of the fence. And that's why, you know, for companies like AT&T and Amazon and others, you get better customers if they have more wealth because they're successful also. So important question. I've seen it happen, and we are working hard to monitor that.
I'm curious potentially how your two companies are thinking about the World Cup. But before I do that, I just want to see, are there any other questions in the audience? Please, right here in the front, Josh. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Santiago Gomez. I'm with Steptoe. Steptoe is a Washington, D.C. firm. We are a Band 1 firm in international trade and taxes, as well as trade policy and trade remedies. And, well, thank you all for sharing your valuable and insightful experiences. It's been a pleasure to hear from you firsthand. I am wondering, from your perspective, what are those hurdles? What are those difficulties as we head into USMCA renegotiation in July 2026? We see a very in-depth chapter in USMCA, Chapter 25, that has all manner of disciplines to promote SMEs. And this seems like a golden opportunity to be ambitious and ask of the trilateral governments to think through how to promote SMEs. So what would you see, or what would you seek be included in those negotiations to facilitate that interactions between larger companies and SMEs? And what are some of those hurdles that you're experiencing? What's keeping you up at night?
Monica, can I ask you to start, and then maybe Pedro?
Of course. Thank you, Santiago. Well, I think USMCA is a great opportunity. Even not having a review, but having a renegotiation with what's apparently coming. And we've been, I think, so scared of it's just a review, trying for it to not become a deep renegotiation, that I see that we're losing, to some extent, the opportunity of actually saying it is a renegotiation. How can we actually make it better? How can we make it stronger? What have we learned during the last few years that we can bring to the table to improve the treaty? And SMEs are a good example. There's also, let me go to one point where I see a massive opportunity, which is in standardizing, and this impacts SMEs, standardizing infrastructure, including that's needed by SMEs. So we talked about transport infrastructure in connectivity, for example, which is what I work in. This is an opportunity to say, okay, the three countries need to first comply with the treaty and its chapters, which is still challenging in some points, because I think no government is complying with everything in the treaty. So, of course, every government should push the others to comply with everything and should push itself to comply with their own part. And then this is an opportunity to say, okay, what's keeping us behind in terms of the growth of these infrastructures? This applies also to energy, to water infrastructure, to highways, which is critical for transport for SMEs, for example, transport of goods. What's holding us back? And how can we have that conversation in the negotiation of the next wave of USMCA? And how can we ensure that whatever is holding us back, we can address in a timely way, remove those barriers, and introduce that into the new cycle of USMCA. And I like your question, because I think we should frame the negotiations as an opportunity and stop being so, shy around, we don't want this to be renegotiated, because it will. It will, and in a context that's complicated, of course, in a context of tariffs, etc. So let's bring these points to the table.
Wonderful. Pedro, I'm going to give you an opportunity. Before I do that, I want to take a quick question from Ron Busby, who's the president and CEO of the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc., longtime friend and colleague. So Ron, throw your question in there, and then we'll have Pedro wrap it up.
Great, and thank you. This is a very interesting conversation. Many of us represent minority businesses and communities in our country. I know that AT&T has recently stepped away from the diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments. Understanding the pressure that the President of the United States is now placing on many corporations, how can you give advice to other CEOs to deal with pressures coming under attack from the President?
This is of course a hard question, and one that I can't answer from a global perspective for AT&T, because I lead AT&T Mexico, and I would be definitely going beyond the boundaries of my responsibilities. What I can tell you is that these are tough times for the discussions on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that sometimes I think these discussions We need to reframe, and we need to ensure that we are still defending basic human rights and basic civil rights, and that the discussion on where merit comes in and where the historic compensation for inequalities for minority groups or vulnerable groups comes in, we can have a mature conversation on that. But I think it's critical, and I say this in a personal way, but I'm very deeply convinced that we need to fight the fight of ensuring that it doesn't keep slipping into really what's human rights and human dignity. And then what I would say is most programs are actually not canceled generally. I'm talking just generally if you look at what has happened in most companies. What happens is many of them need to be open for all populations. But again, it's critical that we keep them and that we ensure that those groups that need them most participate in those programs. For example, development and training programs. We need to open them to everyone in the population, but let's not shut them down. Let's ensure that they continue and they're just open for everyone in the population. So that's, again, my personal view. That's what I'm working on locally. On the global issue, unfortunately, I can't give you an answer because that's outside of my scope.
Thank you, Monica. I'd love to end these things by giving everyone an opportunity to leave our audience with one nugget. And so, Ramiro, I'm going to start with you, and then Monica and Pedro, I'll give you the last word. We have a room here today of some SMEs, but mostly people who are leaders in their communities. They are leading business organizations. They're generating economic activity. They're talking to policymakers. These are the people in this room who are going to shape the future of North America. And so you have an opportunity to leave them with a nugget, a thought, maybe a challenge, something you want to leave the room with. We're appreciative of your time, and Ramiro, I'll ask you to kick us off with the nugget.
Sure, thank you. Really, two quick nuggets. One is I think artificial intelligence is probably the most important thing that we are going to be grappling with in the coming years as an opportunity. And then two, wanted to let people know to never underestimate the power of their individual kindness to others.
I would say let's lean into the renegotiation of USMCA from a perspective of opportunity. Let's advocate for what should be added to the treaty, and let's raise the points on why it is so critical for the economic well-being of the population of the three countries.
And from my side, in the nearly 15 years that I've been working at Amazon, I've always valued how we always listen to our customers, listen to our sellers, and be humble enough to learn from that. And so the challenge that I have for you is, like, whatever organization you are representing, never stop listening to either your members, your constituents, or whoever you are trying to do good with, you know? And please, whenever you have that voice, don't try to do everything by yourself. The world is so interconnected. There is so much technology out there. Lean into, I'm looking at this because it seems to be like a bomb that's going off, and I'm just so scared. So I'm just speaking faster and faster.
In 20 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. In 20 seconds.
We bought that on Amazon.
Yeah, I know. I
18
hope
seconds.
So. You can return. I hope you got it next day, and you can return it anytime. You know. And
12.
So what was I saying? That I want you to listen to your constituents, to the people you're trying to serve, and make use of the network. The fact that you are here means that you are proactive and you are willing to share your precious time with other people who are like-minded, and that should be the spirit of this conference.
Listen, we're all busy people. These are extremely busy people. They could be anywhere in the world. They've chosen to be here with us, figuring out the future of the North American way. Please help me in joining them and thanking them for their time.